Hey, what's up guys? Eddie here as DJ11 from JaetMusicStudios. Today we're going to go through the anatomy of the Trance Acid. Let's get to it. So when it comes to the anatomy of an acid, we have a few basic controls that we need to know. I've got a 303 emulation here. It's a basic plugin, an emulation of the hardware, and it is a quick way to get you to that acid sound. I'm going to play an arpeggiated sequence here. First we tune it. Then we set the cutoff. Acid has high resonance. Acid has an envelope modulator, modulating the cutoff. That envelope has a decay setting. And that takes us to the arpeggiator. An accent knob if we want to accentuate a certain note. We can move the arp up or down via an octave. And we can add some portamento with the slide control. Further controls to that, we would add some distortion. And then some delay and some reverb. Once you have that set up, you would use a wave with harmonics. On the 303, we have a saw or a square. And that's the basic anatomy of an acid. Okay, so this MIDI has some glide portamento involved. It's all around the key of E. I'm going to use Sylenth. The first things first, I'm going to set the portamento. So if we think back to the 303 emulation, we had an envelope, a bandpass filter, the cutoff, we had high resonance, we didn't have distortion, but we do need distortion, and we had an envelope modulator, modulating the cutoff. Okay, so that is essentially what we're going to do. I'm going to loop this. Oh, look, already. Actually sounding not bad. Now the magic knob on the 303 was the decay. So that is what we're going to use to modulate the cutoff and the release. And also, what would Sylenth be without the drive? Yeah. In terms of detune, I use two voices to get some width, not super wide. That's a bit nuts for this type of sound. I'll keep it with a bit of stereo, but you don't want to detune it too far. When it comes to thickening the sound, it's best to leave that until after the science of the sound is down. So let's add some distortion to that. If you need more transient energy, you just add a small pitch envelope, which is something we can't do in the 303. That is the basic premise of the sound. Let's add a little bit of delay to have it in some kind of space, just while we're listening to it. Okay, so that's getting pretty close to what we're looking for. How does it sound with the other acid? Not bad. So when it comes to thickening up the acid, series detune, it's too much phasing in the sound. We can try it here. I mean, it sounds okay there. As soon as you add another oscillator though, it tends to go to shit. So what I'm going to do, what I've done is copied 1A to 1B, change the phase, change the width of it a little bit, and I'm going to play with these fine tuning knobs. So to me, that's sounding pretty good. If we go too far, it just sounds pissed. You might like that, so go nuts, but for me, in this track, I want it to fit nicely in a specific area of the frequency range. Okay, so it's at this point that I would try and experiment with some chorus or some phasing. Some chorus can thicken it up nicely as well, as long as the delay setting is quite short. Yeah, so you hear how the transient gets muddled when the delay's too long. And then we just bring in the dry wet. Okay, that's sounding pretty good. So one of the best ways to thicken up an acid sound is to run it in through parallel filters. So to do this in Sylenth, it is absolutely balls easy. Copy and paste to filter B, accept parts from oscillator A input, and then change these parameters just a little bit. If I set it up here, listen to what happens as I introduce part. Gonna get rid of that chorus. One thing else you can do to make the transient a little bit more interesting is to set a small amount of attack on the amp envelope and a very similar amount of attack on the modulation envelope. So that makes a small difference to the transient, but it does make a difference, and that's what this is all about. Now the sound is semi there. There are a few things we can do to make it a bit more interesting. First things first, I'm going to add an LFO. Set it to the cutoff A. I want it to rant to free. I don't want it synced. And I'm going to turn it up until it sounds pissed, and then I'm going to reduce it just a little bit. going to change it to random. Pretty sure random is just a sample and glide. So it's kind of like a random sine wave going. Okay, so for me, the envelope isn't quite doing what I want it to. Okay, so I think it was the release on part B that was giving me a bit of trouble. They're sounding much better now. Another thing we can do is to vary the distortion amount if we're sticking to native distortion, which I think is sounding best for this track. Let's just give that a crack. Try the phase and just see how that goes. Don't be too careful with this. So that actually sounds pretty good there. If you listen carefully, you can hear that the LFO on the phase does have an effect on the overall pitch, but very subtle amounts. It's good to add a little bit of interest, but you don't want it doing too much or it just won't fit in with the track. Let's hear how it goes with the kick and bass. Now I'm going to experiment with an external distortion, one of the best, homicide. Okay, lots of people say that this distortion is too much. One of the best things about it is that it can get to that level, but it can also be quite subtle. I find it's very good for acids as long as you set the trimmers correctly. The key to setting the trimmers is to have it so one light is fully on and the second light is kind of half on. Just there so the second one's popping on and off. It is the plugin manufacturer's recommendation of setting this trimmer. So the way this plugin works, you set your input level, you set your output level. We have our shaping algorithm, either fat or shape. I'm not too sure what the difference was, but I think fat sounds better for acids generally. We have our compression knob here, and we have our drive knob for the distortion. The higher that is, the more wacko it sounds. But let's play it and see what we get. First things first, put the delay after the distortion. Okay, so one thing I noticed straight away is that the transient becomes too much with this distortion on there. So perhaps if I just lower this amount and the dry wet. Okay, that's sounding better. Let's try something different on the top end. I might just try one more. That's a free one. Saturation knob. This is from Softtube. It's a very good distortion unit. I'm not sure if it's going to work here. First, I'll try it with the native distortion combined, and then I'll try what it's like without it. Okay, so it's sounding quite nice just there. Once you've got everything set up, you can experiment with different waves. This is what a pulse sounds like. Actually doesn't sound too bad. Try one of the half pulses. To me, that one sounds the best, but I do think you get good contrast with the pulse wave compared to all of the other sounds, which are in this track primarily comprised of saw waves. Let's see how that goes with the kick and the bass. Compare that to a saw wave. Okay, so I think the saw sounds best, but that's just to my ears. There you go, guys. That's how you make a simple trance acid. The key to the acid sound is setting the envelopes using a wave with the high harmonic content, either a saw, pulse, or square, a bandpass or low pass filter, high resonance, lots of distortion, and a bit of filter modulation. And then that's it. For more interest, you can use LFOs on the cutoff, distortion amounts, phase, even pitch. You can even set your phases here, and even thicken it through detuning, either with the fine tuning knobs or with the detune knob. But be very careful, as you can overdo it very easily. All right, guys, happy music making. Pause the screen if you want to copy that sound. There's not much to it. There's a saw wave using the FM sync. There is the effects. There is the matrix. Envelope 2. Tilt it in, and with the kick in the bass, it sounds like this.